Yo, what it is, YouTube? It's your boy Nitsa coming back with another bullseye of a tutorial here today. I want to talk about how you can create separation and depth within mixes, right? How to make your mixes sound more dynamic, a little bit deeper, and how to affect the stereo imaging. So we got to understand that this type of mixing, right, to create depth is actually a mindset and not necessarily can be brought down onto one plugin like a S1 stereo imager or, you know, any of these widening plugins that people try to use to create a sense of space and depth. So I have a rough mix right here by one of my good homies, Rico, who's an amazing artist. I'm going to link him down below. I'm going to show you the before and after of this mix that he sent me to work on for him, how I was able to create separation, layers, and how, you know, kind of like my mindset and my approach to how I create separation, depth, and width in a mix, right?
Just been coolin', lately I just been alone. She callin', text, been in my head, not on my phone. Been thinking about the past, thinking about my people gone. I'm stuck up on this island, tryna find my way back home. But I'm gon' be alright. Been through a lot, know I was born to fight. Been through some shit, but I know it's just life. I know I'm close, I see it in my side. I'm close, I stretch my arms out, I could grab it. Remember days, pockets empty, I ain't had shit. And I just wanted buku money and a bad bitch. I was finessing, just been coolin', lately I just been alone. She callin', text, been in my head, not on my phone. Been thinking about the past, thinking about my people gone. I'm stuck up on this island, tryna find my way back home. But I'm gon' be alright. Been through a lot, know I was born to fight. Been through some shit, but I know it's just life. I know I'm close, I see it in my side. I'm close, I stretch my arms out, I could grab it. Remember days, pockets empty, I ain't had shit. And I just wanted buku money and a bad bitch. I was finessing niggas tryna get that bag quick.
So let's look at a couple of techniques that I use. The very first technique that we got to always think about is EQ, right? And how do we approach that EQ, right? So as you can see right here, I didn't do too much EQ on his vocal because as an engineer, you have to figure out, you know, what is my job here on this mix? When I got Rico's vocals originally, he's using like a Townsend microphone, I believe, was what he showed me previously. So his vocals already sounded so well tracked and so perfect, right, that I realized that my job here was not to make his lead vocal sound any better, right? It was to actually make the separation between the multiple layers, right? And I did that by you know, kind of carving the frequencies out, right? So when I look at low pass and high pass filters, I do not see that as, oh, I need to make it cleaner, or I need to make it, you know what people usually say, I see it as distance, right? Because you know for sure in real life, you know, low end energy, right, you know, the bottom of how a vocal sounds tells your brain the distance, right? Usually when somebody's all the way in the back of the room, you will not hear that much low end, but when they come up a little bit closer to you, you can hear that mid bass and that low end in their voice, and that tells your brain something is close to me, right? So making music and mixing is like a house. I treat all my mixes like a house, right? In order to have a good mix or a strong house, you have to build it on a strong foundation. So the very first thing I always do is I pick what element am I going to build this mix around? What is going to be the highlight of this song? Sometimes I will keep it real with you guys. Sometimes the lead vocal isn't even the foundation for how I build my song. I might pick the ad-libs, or I might pick the background vocals, right, to drive the song. But whatever it is, I focus on getting that right first, and I build everything around it, right? Kind of like a house. You got to build the foundation first, then you put the roof, then you put the walls, right? So I use filtering, and usually as I go from my lead vocal to my background vocals, I usually start you know, sweeping more of the lows and the highs, right? Because I'm carving these spaces out, right? You can make the mix sound smaller or just like a big blob if all of the same frequencies are competing for the same spots. So we always got to think about that. Look at the background vocal bus. I did a little bit more aggressive high passing, and then with the ad lib, same things goes there. So filtering is a great way to create separation, right? But you have to be methodical with the filtering, right? First, you set your foundation, whatever that is, you get that right in your beginning levels. Then you start to bring the other ones in and see how do they conform around the how do they conform around the main element, right? It's kind of like a home, right? When you build a home, you start putting furniture in it, right? But you don't start putting furniture into a house that doesn't have a foundation, doesn't have a roof. You have to have the parts first, you build around it, then you put all the stuff inside of it. So then that brings me to my panning. As an engineer, you have to give checkpoints and pretty much kind of set the boundaries of how the house is, which is your song, right, to the listener. So what I do is with my reverbs and my delays, I always let those be the widest elements. Pay attention to the background vocals. Look at the panning, right? The panning right here. Look at how they're like kind of on 70, right? I like to do LCR panning too, but over time I realized there's actually a little bit of space in between, right? If I have my vocal dead center and everything panned hard left and right, there's actually some space in between, right? Which could kind of be like the furniture, right? That I'm gonna use to tell the listener, oh, hey, this is my house, right? This vocal is the center of my house. And then the background vocals are kind of like, what's inside of my house, like the refrigerator and all that other stuff. So that's an analogy that I use to think about it and make it simpler for myself, right? So I like to pan sometimes things 50, 40, right in the middle, because there definitely is some space there, right? I'm telling the listener about the multiple layers. It's your job as an engineer to point out, just like when somebody comes to your house and they say, hey, can I use the bathroom? You say, oh, yeah. The bathroom is all the way down the hallway to the left. You as the engineer, you're responsible for pointing the listener to where everything is at. That's how you create that sense of separation. That's something that was developed by the human ear, right? So then after that, right, what I like to do too, right, to enhance the foundation, which is the lead vocal, is I like to actually use a pull tech, a little trick that I have. This is my trick. And what I do is I use the pull tech, right? I boost up 60 hertz, right? And I do this because that's a lot of where the rumble is and a lot of the girth, right? So you perceive it as being closer to you. But then I keep myself in check by using a dynamic EQ fab filter, right? So these two plugins back to back, pull tech going into a dynamic EQ, I'm just finding that it's giving me the benefits of the closeness, right? So I'm telling the listener, hey, this is the ground floor, but then I'm not getting any of the extra muddiness that the 60 hertz gives me. You can try this technique with any other EQ, but I just like the pull tech, and also the tube topology brings it forward, right? The listener has to understand, hey, this is what forward is, this is what the back is, right? So you got to tell the listener, hey, this is the front door, this is the living room, this is the backyard, that's the kitchen. That's what you got to do with your EQ moves, right? And then the next thing that brings me to is compression, right? The initial transient. Let's think about the initial transient. When somebody is walking to you in real life, right, and their footsteps, all you hear is, as they're getting closer to you, you hear more of the transient, right? The transient tells you distance. It's literally a part of your human ear. So think about the transient. When somebody's walking closer to you, you hear pop, 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 like the steps get louder, clop, 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 like their shoes are clicking and you can hear like, yo, somebody's coming right behind me, right? Versus when the person is walking away. Think about that transient, right? That initial transient when their foot hits the ground, how da, 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 like that transient gets quieter and quieter and quieter, and and your ear uses that to determine distance, right? So how does that roll over to mixing, right? It comes down to the compression and the attack time that you're using, right? So right here, I know that my lead vocal has to be, kind of like the forefront. It's what I picked, right? It sometimes it varies on different songs, but I picked the lead vocal to be the forefront of my vocal. So I use a slow attack, right? So to keep that transient, and I'm just literally telling the listener, hey, this is the front of the house because you're hearing more transient. Now, as I'm coming to my background vocals and my ad-libs, you will notice a pattern, right? That I'm using fast attack, right? The fast attack is taking the punch out of the compressor. Well, it's taking the punch out of the background vocals, right? So because I have less of the transient in the background vocals, it actually sounds like it's way farther away. Let's bring in the before and after of how I was able to create separation using that compression.
Now I'm straight, I did it all on my own. You talk down on me, the rocks and stone. She know I really thug for real. She thought I was a rapper, I ain't even signed no deal. I keep that shit 100, all I spit is real spill. She say what's T4E, I told her I'm forever trill. She wanna fuck on me and she look like her lips can kill. She say her name was Roxy, told her I don't pop no pill. And I don't want her love, I just want a couple mil. Don't wanna hear your problems, bitch, my name not Dr. Phil. And in case they try to take me, put my brother in my will. Pick up the phone. Now I'm straight, I did it all on my own. You talk down on me, the rocks and stone. She know I really thug for real. She thought I was a rapper, I ain't even signed no deal. I keep that shit 100, all I spit is real spill. She say what's T4E, I told her I'm forever trill. She wanna fuck on me and she look like her looks can kill. She say her name was Roxy, told her I don't pop no pill. And I don't want her love, I just want a couple mil. Don't wanna hear your problems, bitch, my name not Dr. Phil. And in case they try to take me, put my brother in my will.
Okay, and pretty much, you know, you will go ahead and while you're mixing, you just listen to the transient, pay attention. Think about what I said about the footsteps, you know, when you hear less of the transient, it sounds far away. So that's how you create separation in the mix, you know, by the amount of transient that you give them, you know, it's pretty much telling them, you know, where everything in the house is at, right? And another thing I like to do is setting different reverb times. I actually don't like to share the same reverbs amongst everything. I like to use different reverb times, right? So usually with my background vocals, they will have possibly a shorter reverb time, right? Something like a plate, like pay attention right here. I only did 1 second of plate right here, just something shorter to let the listener know, hey, this is my living room, right? Which is the bigger space with what's the vocals saying. But I also have a smaller room right there, which is how, you know, you should kind of see it, right? It's a room, but there's also another room right there in the same house, which is the song, but it's smaller. So that's how I see it, you know? And another thing I like to do finally is I like to use varying types of auto-tune to create separation, right? I like to use different retune speeds and different amounts of humanize and different amounts of tracking too, right? Which is the detection circuit for the auto-tune, to just give like different layers to the listener, right? So the listener can understand that, okay, this lead vocal is being tuned this way, and you know, this is where I'm at right here, but the background vocals are being tuned a little bit more aggressive, so that's a different sound. So that is kind of creating separation versus where some people, sometimes what they will do is they will just copy and paste the settings over from the lead vocal to the background vocals. There's nothing wrong with doing that, right? In the beginning, because you're learning, but down the line, you know, once you want your mixes to sound, you know, a little bit better, you should try to maybe take off some of the plugins, right? Maybe you duplicate the track and you take off some of the plugins, or you use different, combinations, right? You take that compressor, you put it first, you know, just do something to give it a different action, a different taste, a different feel, you know, just for you to point the listener and where it is in the house, right? And pretty much after that, I just use those different, speeds of auto-tune to distinguish everything. If I'm coaching the artist, I'm in the studio with the artist, I'm going to tell them, hey, you know, maybe you should do kind of like a different type of take or a different melody behind the lead vocal, just so the listener can understand, oh, hey, this is something new, right? So that's giving us a sense of separation versus if the person was to do, like, let's say the ends or the dub the same exact way as they did the lead vocal, it would make the vocal actually sound smaller and more congested. Let's listen to the reference track again and pay attention to how, like, you can't even hear the background vocals, and that's just due to the fact that everything kind of sounds like it was processed the same, right?
Now I'm straight, I did it all on my own. You talk down on me, the rocks and stone. She know I really thug for real. She thought I was a rapper, I ain't even signed no deal. I keep that shit 100, all I spit is real spill. She say what's T4E, I told her I'm forever trill. She wanna fuck on me and she look like her looks can kill. She say her name was Roxy, told her I don't pop no pill. And I don't want her love, I just want a couple mil. Don't wanna hear your problems, bitch, my name not Dr. Phil. And in case they try to take me, put my brother in my will. Pick up the phone. Now I'm straight, I did it all on my own. You talk down on me, the rocks and stone. She know I really thug for real. She thought I was a rapper, I ain't even signed no deal. I keep that shit 100, all I spit is real spill. She say what's T4E, I told her I'm forever trill. She wanna fuck on me and she look like her looks can kill. She say her name was Roxy, told her I don't pop no pill. And I don't want her love, I just want a couple mil. Don't wanna hear your problems, bitch, my name not Dr. Phil. And in case they try to take me, put my brother in my will.
So that was my job here as an engineer. You got to pick as an engineer, you know, like, what am I bringing to the table for this song, right? Because it's not all about, oh, making it sound clean, because his vocals already sounded clean, right? So that's what I always try to talk about, that incremental mixing. Sometimes you only got to make a song 3% better, right? So I hope this video was able to help you guys. There is some other techniques that I could go over. If you want to see more of this type of content, let me know down below. If you have any more ideas, go ahead and drop that in the comments down below. Just want to say thanks a lot for being a great part of my YouTube family. Appreciate it. Peace.